The topic of this morning's conversation is all about the GeoBIM, so the convergence of geo and the building information modeling. For us at the Open Geospatial Consortium, it is one of our most active areas. It's actually one of our priority domains for 2020 because we're connecting two communities, the geospatial community and the construction and engineering communities. Our panelists will share their insights on really the next generation of BIM, the importance of geo in that world, the challenges that they've encountered as they are transitioning, innovating, disrupting. We have Lisa Campbell. Lisa is the Chief Marketing Officer at Autodesk, and she's responsible for the business, industry, and marketing strategy for the company. She's been with Autodesk for 16 years, held multiple roles. I'm so excited, to actually get to know her and hear her perspective on strategy, marketing for the architecture, engineering, and construction industry. My favorite thing is she recently joined the board of Dropbox. Again, this is geo becoming everywhere, so hopefully injecting that perspective into that other world. Let me start with Lisa, if I may. So Lisa has really been a part of this transformation that has occurred in the BIM domain. So my question to you, Lisa, is how do you see this disruption through your career, and how do you see it going forward? Again, I love that you mentioned the word, we are disrupting. So can you please share from your experience?
Yeah, okay, thank you. So I don't know how many people are familiar with Autodesk, but we serve the architecture, engineering, construction industry, as well as manufacturing and media and entertainment. And from an AEC perspective, it's been very interesting to see the level of disruption in this industry. So many of you are probably aware of this, but I always like to share just at a high level. Right now, what we're saying is that we are going to basically double the number of people who are living in cities in the next 30 years. So you think about that. It took us, like 6,000 years to get to where we are today, and we're going to double that in another 30 years. And when you think about what does that mean in terms of infrastructure and assets and buildings, that means that's about 200,000 people moving into cities every day, which means the definition of city in urban areas is probably going to change. And that translates into needing about 13,000 buildings per day. And from a road and rail perspective, the estimates are that you need enough road and rail to wrap the earth like 30 times per year. So imagine what that's doing to the AEC industry. That's the kind of demands that they have. And so one of the big things that we're seeing is they're saying, I have to be able to collaborate better, I need to be more productive, I need to be able to show return on investment, we need to be able to have quality. The people that they're serving, so state, local, national governments are saying, I care about quality, I care about safety, I care about that the experience is going to be great in the city and urban area that I serve. And because of that, that's why we're seeing this revolution being driven by technology. And that's why technology, you're seeing so much adoption and so much happening in this space, because data underlies all of that. And that's where I see geospatial and BIM, building information modeling data, coming together and being so critical for our customers, because you have to understand the environment and the context upon which you're building these assets that will live for 50, 60, 70 years. And so that's the level of disruption that we're seeing happen in the industry, that they have to meet these demands. And the way to do that is you need this data and this technology to do it.
Fantastic. And I see a lot of heads nodding, which is great. So Andreas, can I ask you a question to set the context? So you had mentioned, we started the morning with the Industrial Revolution 4.0, and you said the construction industry is probably at 1.2. So can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, certainly I could. Unfortunately, that would probably eat up all of the 30 minutes we have, so I have to try to cut it short. I think a symptom a symptom that proves that the construction industry is an industry 1.2 is actually the new Berlin airport. I am a German, so I can easily talk about that. This airport is now on a schedule overrun of 8 years, and the cost has more than doubled to about 2 billion euros. And I think it's fair to state that probably no other industry would accept things like that in terms of schedule overrun, cost overrun. Just imagine the aerospace industry would work that way, or the automotive industry would work that way, or the computer industry would work that way. That's just not, we cannot just imagine that. But this is still the reality in the construction industry, and there's a reason to it. If you look at what we call the first 3 industrial revolutions, it's the steam engine, it's the automated manufacturing, it's the IT revolution. From all those revolutions, the only thing that gave a push to the productivity in the construction industry is actually the invention of the steam engine. If you go to a modern construction site, it still looks like the old Egypt construction areas where they built their pyramids. The only thing that has changed is we have caterpillars with an engine. Everything else is still the same. Think about the surveyors. They still use the same methods that they used in the old Egypt world. And this obviously has to change. Otherwise, the construction industry will not be able to cope with the challenges that Lisa just described. We will not be able to do all that is needed to bring the infrastructure in place for all those people that move into the cities to cope with the challenges in environmental protection and so on and so on. And that's the context when I talk about Industry 1.0. There's a lot of work to be done. On the other hand, there is obviously also optimism, because we have great companies like Autodesk, Trimble, Regal, and so on, and Faro, obviously, and we can cope with that challenge, but we have to collaborate to make those advancements much faster than it happened in the last 50, 100 years. If you think about another example, let's say finance industry today, it's fully digitized. We talk about fintech and so on. They started somewhere end of the 60s or early 70s, so it took them 40, 50 years to get to where they are today. I would argue we don't have another 40, 50 years in the construction industry. We have to do it much faster, maybe in 10 years. That's our challenge, and I think all the companies that are represented here are focused and committed to make that change happen.
Right. Thank you, Andreas. Great on your response, not great on the fact that it's 1.0. Just, James, you were nodding your head, and I have no doubt that this context is feeds into your product management approach and envisioning the new solutions for this new world. Can you share your perspective?
I'd love to. Thank you, Nadine. I think the current curse of construction is well known, and it must be overcome. So what I wanted to talk to everybody about today was how it is being overcome, and I've got a specific example. In Florida, there's a major international airport expansion taking place, and McKinsey calls out for they call it high density or high definition surveying as one of the key drivers for the new perspective in construction. And in this particular project, the high definition surveying is being driven by drones. So the drone comes out once a week, or is out there every week and multiple times during the week. It takes about a 10-minute flight over the whole site. And it's an enormous site. It's, I believe, about a 40-acre site. And what this is this is the perspective view for the site superintendent. So the site superintendent no longer walks outside of the job trailer and takes a look around and sees 0.1% of the project. He gets a complete video overview of what's taking place on that project several times a week. That video overview is being shared along with other information with all of the other subcontractors and everybody else on the job site, including the airport authority, so everyone knows what's happening on the job site. Now, of course, we're a LiDAR company, and they're utilizing LiDAR on this drone to be able to map things, and early on in the project, we were mapping the earthworks and doing it quite accurately. And the critical aspect of that is you start building, all of a sudden you haven't done your surveying correctly, or there's aspects that you've missed, and then boom, rework, right? So that's been cured. Complete materials management is also evident in this. They've included some other new techniques, which if you don't have your safety vest and all your safety equipment on, it's automatically notified and you're kicked off the job site right away. So they're sharing data through AutoCAD's Autodesk's Navisworks, I hope I said that correctly, and they're being able to facilitate the information widely and broadly, and it's led to, and this is what they're claiming, okay, so a contractor rarely claims something like this, but they're gaining 1 day a month on the schedule, utilizing these new methods to build with. So just a exciting glimpse at the future.
Fascinating, absolutely. So, Mark, can you comment, actually, can you build on that from your perspective at Trimble? Because you've essentially sort of witnessed and driven and led this transformation on the tools and the data collection, and even, my understanding, your internal processes. So can you share that perspective, this transformation of the industry, of the company, and the education of your customers as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Nadine. I think one of the challenges as a technology provider, and I'm sure Lisa can share this, is the sheer amount of data that's being created now in the field in this transformation. And the industry and the back-end systems that are not yet equipped to handle it. That's one of the challenges we face every day. And it's kind of the early indication of this transformation is, there's multiple $1 billion of private capital being poured in every year into this industry because private capital, private equity sees the challenge, sees the market size, sees the opportunity here, and that's actually making it harder for people like us, and I guess we've been labeled an industry consolidator, as has Autodesk and some others, because these point solutions are coming up at a rapid point. They're creating more data, and then our customers are looking to us to bring that data together, and that's the challenge we face every day in projects like the Orlando airport, the Beijing airport, the new Mumbai airport, especially in airports. Big city construction is, this is a crazy world and industry that we're in, and the amount of data is massive, and the cloud processing systems are not yet there, and that's the challenge on all of us to kind of really push this evolution to the next level, is to start to bring those technologies together to allow our customers, a single point, a single interface, a single way to interact with the data that's being created in the field and drive quality and safety, productivity, and ultimately profit into our customers' hands.
Fantastic. So I have to sneak in this question because I'm, representing OGC. You mentioned we have a lot of data. So can you comment, maybe Lisa and Mark, from the technology providers, the challenge of data, interoperability, integration? Are we doing enough? Do your customers care? Or is it all the magic that happens in the background?
Yeah, well, our customers absolutely do care. I mean, I'm sure many people in this audience care about this because they're basically saying, you're the technology provider, I don't want to have to be responsible for this, and people worry about data loss as you move from step to step. And we do look at things across the life cycle, right? So there's from planning to design to construction and operate and manage. And people care about all of their data being able to travel through all of those stages, be accurate, be up to date, be accessible, because you have to manage these assets for years to come. And one of the things that we've been working on, and I'm sure my colleagues here are doing the same, is there are strategic relationships where we're making sure our products can share data and that there's interoperability and that the data can flow seamlessly. We also have to worry about privacy of the data. How do we handle this data, that what data we have and how are we using this data? One of the points that was brought up was this proliferation of information. Well, one of the things that's also happening, and we even see the application in construction now, you collect all of this data, now you can use machine learning. And machine learning can get smarter and smarter about this, so that what happens is construction companies can actually see and learn from past projects, and they can start to understand what suppliers tend to maybe be late and not late. They'll be able to understand maybe through these building conditions, these are the type of projects maybe that have overruns or not, or these are the types of things where we tend to have more waste. And they're really trying to figure out how to reduce waste with this data and how to build more sustainable assets. And so I think that is one of the keys about not losing your data through every step, and that we do have to work hard together in the back end to be able to share information as it goes across each step of the life cycle.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly agree with that, and I'm glad you brought up machine learning. It's something we struggle with every day in terms of the next level of productivity in our markets in construction, predominantly because this fragmented data that's coming from all over the place is a exponentially more difficult problem to solve from a machine learning aspect. And how you go about solving it and how you go about bringing that data together from a technology standpoint is a really complex problem to solve. And I know, we certainly put a lot of money into trying to pull together that data. The saying I use amongst my team is like interoperability is the bare minimum threshold. That's table stakes, right? So you must be interoperable. Integrated, even better, right? Integrated is that next level. That's where we'll be able to provide an AI layer and start to really, tell a customer what to do better and what to do differently in real time to enhance, how do I take that one day and make it 3? Well, I got to get ahead of the problems, right, with the technology, and I've got to tell them when something's going wrong before it goes wrong, and also pivot a job site simultaneously with 10, 20, 30 systems, operating in the background. And that's going to be a difficult technology challenge over the coming years. It'll certainly keep me busy. Keeps me up at night now.
So let me switch topics a little bit from the technology to the business value. And maybe I'm going to pick up on Jim's example because I think we need more of these examples. Numbers and concrete instances where we have shown value. Can you? And this is, I think, as a geo, this is from the geo perspective. Mm-hmm. We are a long way, I think, in terms of capturing the value of this gold or this diamond that we're sitting on, and your examples would definitely help. So I'd like to actually hear an example from each one of the panelists.
The example one was fun, and I thought, we get real world, but I want to touch on something else, particularly something that you're involved in, okay? So we're a LiDAR manufacturer, and we create these wonderful point clouds, and nobody cares about them but us, right? You want information at the point of work. You don't want to have point clouds. And so we make these point clouds, and then we transform them into a LAS file, and we've got all of these attributes that are associated with the XYZ points and RGB points and things of that nature. And then we hit this barrier. It's called LAS. It's old school. I was there at the beginning of LAS. I helped define it, create it. You can see how old I am. Well, that format's way old. And we need to be able to get these new digital cameras, these new LiDAR systems that are available with all of the information that they have bust through that barrier. So we need a new data format that covers all the different instrumentations so that we can take the data into your software packages, pull them in, apply machine learning aspects to that to be able to extract the truths of it, and it's time for us to bust through that. So I didn't mean to get real specific about that, but it's a problem, right? So I mean, we're taking point clouds, we're taking them back a step once we get them created, throwing them into other packages, trying to do things to do workarounds when we need to just bust through the problems, get the data where it's supposed to go, let these wonderful companies that are doing all the machine learning algorithms to be able to assess and ascertain the truth of what's taking place and get it into their hands as fast as possible. So didn't mean to get on my soapbox on that, but Nadine, you're key to that, right?
No. It's good. I mean, we've always said 70 to 80% of the time spent on a project is to get the data ready. And here we are in 2019, we're still having the same issues. But at the same time, like Mark was saying, we have way more data. We're made diversity of data. You guys are into the IoT. You mentioned the drones data. So we just need to get better at this problem. So maybe I'll look at Andreas right now. Because to solve the interoperability issue and this geo to BIM integration, it requires maybe a cultural change. You need collaboration amongst the right stakeholders. Can you comment on that from your perspective? And I also please chime in, because I think, collaboration is on everybody's minds.
I certainly can add to that a little bit and also come back to your earlier question. I think there are industries that have shown us that close collaboration along the vertical industry will benefit everybody. And there are two examples. One is the automotive industry, which is one of the most verticalized industries. And if you look at the car today, the OEM is only doing about 30% of the value of the car. All the rest, and it's like the iceberg, is coming from other companies that many people don't even know the names, but they contribute to the value, and they have a very good living in that value chain. Similarly, in the IT industry, the computer guys, they know the roadmaps of the chip makers, and the chip makers talk to the equipment makers that are, again, companies we don't know. Even if you are in the IT industry, you might never heard the name ASML, but those are really the guys that make all that stuff happen, and that only works because they are sharing their roadmaps and they are working very closely together, and I think that's something we can learn from. And if we do that right, we can make quick wins and make huge impacts. And as we talked about, you asked about real-life examples. We just collaborated in a project that was about a large hospital to be completely built from scratch here in the US. And actually that project was finished 4 months ahead of schedule, under budget. And what they really did, they consequently brought the planning world and the real world together, because 3D CAD is around since many years. That's not new. You could do that. The problem is what you do on the construction side is never exactly what you have in the system. And there are obviously various ways how to overcome that hurdle, and the digital twin is one thing. You can just go out and scan every day, and then at least you can adjust your plans that they reflect what is there in reality. But you could go one step further, and that's what we did with partners in that project. You could actually use the 3D model and create a digital template out of it. That means we are projecting the plan to the construction site, so people, as they do the work, they don't have to look in a computer or look at a paper. They actually see on the construction site by means of a digital template that is projected on the site, and that dramatically reduces rework and errors. And this is only possible if the companies work together, if we have open interfaces, we allow data to be exchanged, and we also make the workflows open and allow people to contribute. And that's something I think we can learn from other industries, and if you do it in a consequent way, there are quick wins. They're very clear.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I could add a couple things of just, you said, concrete examples. Well, first, we are working with partners to do this integration of data. We have a great relationship with the SRI, and we've been able to do integration with our tools there, where we're sharing data, which is great, and we're going to go to the next level, working now on interoperability and integration at the cloud level. But if you want some statistics, which is pretty interesting, so the UK actually put a mandate, I think it was about 2 years ago, they put a BIM mandate in place for all public projects. Yep. Recent statistics and research that they've published has said that they were able to reduce by 50% the number of projects that were late and over budget. That's huge. What they're now focused on is how can they reduce cost by 33%, and how can they start to reduce emissions by another 50%. And so Germany is also looking at putting a BIM mandate in place in 2020. The United States actually has that for federal buildings or public buildings, but we don't for all buildings, which we probably should. So there's many countries that we are seeing around the world starting to put this mandate in place, which helps with safety, with quality, with sustainability, and again, with this ability to have data that allows you to operate and manage the asset so that you're doing it in this sustainable way, you're reducing waste, you're increasing productivity, collaboration, and to be able to get statistics like that is pretty incredible, especially at a national level.
Yeah, I think there's no question that Europe is about 10 miles ahead of the United States when it comes to the use of this technology. Japan's, coming around, and actually Australia and New Zealand has always been an early adopter of technology, and we're seeing that as well. There's a big push for carbon emissions at the planning stage of a project, which is new and something we haven't seen historically. So, I think people are wrapping their arms around the benefits of this technology. And, I know, you asked for examples. So this one's from about 12 months ago, or 24 months ago. I was in India working with a customer on the Mumbai airport project, and they said, we want to use Trimble compaction technology, but, we want to do a pilot. I said, well, no thanks, we're not doing a pilot. And they said, well, why wouldn't you do a pilot? We want to put $50,000. And our response is, with some of this technology, it's just so clear cut. We said, you know what? We'll give you the technology. You give us the cost savings. It was about a $1.5 billion project at the time, US dollars. And we usually have a return on that of about 30%. So I'll take, $450 million in exchange for, a few $100,000 in technology any day of the week. So it's coming, right? And we don't have that resistance anymore. And, you're not seeing this request for, well, let me try it. I think the younger generation inside of BIM is wrapping their arms around it, and it's being led by governments in Europe. Scandinavia is even further ahead of the rest of Europe. So we're seeing it now. I guess it's crossed the chasm in parts of the world, and it's now creating this pull that I guess the pressure's on us now to deliver these results to our customers.
So I've heard from Jim's, like one of the things that we still need to solve is this common layer, the interoperability layer. I heard a little bit about the culture of collaboration. I heard a little bit about, more mandates. Maybe if you have, one thing to share, or what is on your wish list, what do we need to do to get this to the next level, the crossing the chasm, as Mark has mentioned? What would it be from each of the panelists? Andreas, maybe I can start with you.
It's a really hard question. I think the most important thing actually would be to get over the habits in the construction world. This is probably the hardest thing because they did it for the last 150 years the way they do it now. And change of behavior is one of the hardest learning experiences for human people. And I think you mentioned that, we really need to rely on young people that are eager to try new things. And the construction industry is a conservative one because they also have typically rather low margins compared to the volumes of money they move in those buildings. So they are afraid that they even might lose that small margin if they try new things. Actually, the projects have proven that the opposite is true. If you do it, you can dramatically increase your margin because you eliminate so much waste. There is a lot of money to be gained for everybody. But this learning, to seed that into the brains is probably the most difficult thing.
Yeah, I'd like to carry on that theme. So we have a company right in California, actually, that is really trying to reimagine construction. And so here's what's really interesting. They are bringing manufacturing processes to construction. So think about this. They have a facility where they are prefabricating 1- and 2-person apartments, right, and living units that can be built. And through that, I don't know how many of you know this, but buildings, I think, account for 30% of the emissions in the world. By the way, there's 30% waste in construction, just pure waste. Because they're bringing these processes that manufacturers have been using for 30, 35 years, have been able to reduce their waste, I think, below 15%, and their goal is to get as close to zero as possible. Now, imagine the impact that we can have on the world when we think about all of this demand for new infrastructure, new buildings, et cetera, and if we could start to bring these new processes and really treat a construction site like an open-air factory, you could start to bring all of this technology and capability where we can build better, reduce all of this waste. And so that's the big thing that I'm looking at, and it's within reach because there's companies doing it today.
So real quickly, within technology, this iPhone is emblematic of what's happened in technology for geospatial over the last 10 years. So the tools are there. There's obstacles that are in the way. The software's there. The hardware's there. Everything's ready. We've just got some obstacles we need to work together on to pull it apart.
Mark?
Yeah, I mean, I echo that. I think, you know, the data transformation again is just going to be instrumental in how we get from here to the next level. And you know, everything, you know, a lot of what we talked about, and you know, a lot of the tools out there now are retrospective, right? You fly a drone, you take an image in a point cloud that's telling you where you are today and where you've come from before. And then the next transformation that I think is really instrumental here is how do we look forward, right? Is not about making a decision based on data we've just captured about the past and making that leap forward. And I think it's going to be a critical next phase for us. And you know, it's a pretty exciting time. I know as a relatively young guy, it's pretty interesting to kind of dive in. You know, if we can take those margins, increase them, increase the prefab, reduce the waste, reduce the carbon emissions. You know, we can change the world. Ultimately, it's about, you know, even beyond profit, beyond, you know, rework and costs, and that's about sustainability, not only of us, but the planet and the people on it. So.
Thank you very much. I can't thank you enough for actually being here. These are extremely busy people because they're out there doing the work. I mean, we talk about the Industrial Revolution. To me, it feels like reality TV. We're looking at things happening in real time, and these are the leaders in the GeoBIM. So I'd really like to thank them for their time and their insights. And they're going to be here. I know you didn't get the chance to ask them questions, but they'll be here. And we have like a whole morning on GeoBIM and the breakouts. So thank you again, Lisa, Andreas, James, and Mark, for your time and for being here. Appreciate it. Thank you.